Today's episode of Beyond the Mask is presented by the insurance specialists at Bright Think Wealth Strategies. Find the disability insurance coverage that fits you best right now. Email Robert Smith at rsmithjr@financialguide.com. The show is also made possible by the team at CRNA Financial Planning. Get a free consultation today to be guided through the complexities of investing and financial planning. Just visit crnafinancialplanning.com. We'd also like to thank Helping Hands and OSA EMR for their support of the show. And don't forget, listening to our podcast can earn you Class B credits. For more information on how you can submit them, check out the CE Credit tab on our website, beyondthemaskpodcast.com. Welcome to Beyond the Mask, Innovation and Opportunities for CRNAs, with Jeremy Stanley and Sharon Pierce. We know you spend your day caring for your patient's best interests. On our show, we want to care for you. Join us as we leave the operating room and learn the latest in the CRNA industry. Beyond the Mask starts in 10, 9, 8, 7.
Welcome to Beyond the Mask. I'm Jeremy Stanley, and I've been working with CRNAs for over 23 years, and I'm married to one. And my co-host is
Sharon Pierce.
Sharon's a practicing CRNA for over 20 years, a past president of the ANA, the NCANA, and she's held many other leadership roles. As usual, our goal with every episode is to educate and enlighten CRNAs, and I think our topic today is definitely going to do that. And Sharon, what time is it?
It's time to wake up, Jeremy.
I think it is. Well, hello, Sharon. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself in your green tie on St. Patty's Day?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Doing great. You know, can't complain. It's a beautiful day outside, and I get to spend some time with you and our wonderful guest today in the studio. Of course, in the studio without you, but,
right.
You know, we'll make it work, right?
Well, you are in for a treat with this guest today, and we have been trying to get her since last August. She has made us wait quite a long time to hook up.
Well, you know what they say. Good things come to those who wait. So,
well, we waited.
So we're in good shape now. Do you want to introduce our mystery guest today, Sharon?
Well, I absolutely will start that. And we have with us today Jenny Krogh. And the background that I have with Jenny is I didn't know her before, and I met her when we went to school at Yale together. She was in my class. So we spent 3 years together, and we lived through it. So there you go. So we'll just go ahead and let you tell us a little bit about your background, Jenny, and introduce your topic for us today.
Certainly. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you for waiting. Sorry, my schedule is bananas. So a little bit about me. I am a Midwesterner at heart, born and raised in Michigan. And then I started moving around the country. I lived in Florida for about 8 years. I went to school there at University of North Florida for my anesthesia program. And in Florida, I met my husband, well, my now husband, who is active duty Air Force. So he has kind of kept us going from various deserts in this great United States of America about every 2 or 3 years. So I've lived in Arizona, California, and Illinois. And those, I think, are the only.
So tell what he does in the Air Force, Jenny.
Yeah. So he is, he's a test pilot. Prior to that, he was an A-10 pilot. And now he is flying F-16 and the T-38.
Very cool. Do you ever get to go up with him?
No. So
okay.
The A-10 is a single seater, first of all.
Okay.
But there are some opportunities for spouses where we can either taxi with someone or go on, I think, a C-17, but I have not done that yet. I've been very remiss.
Yeah, I knew there were opportunities to do that, so it's always fun to hear.
It's time to go.
Yes, we're hoping this summer we can make some time and put me in a jet.
And you serve also.
I do. Yes, I am in the Navy Reserves, which keeps me moving around the country here and there. So I've, in a Navy capacity, been attached to Florida, San Diego. I've been to Portsmouth a few times, and I know some of our Navy colleagues there, which is fantastic. It's a wonderful community. That's really what keeps me in the services, is in part my colleagues.
Sure. Well, thank you both for your service.
Absolutely.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. So what are we going to be talking about today, Jenny?
We are going to be talking about methamphetamines.
Yay. Sounds great to me. Yes.
What a time to talk about drugs.
Yeah, what a great time to talk about drugs. So, and tell us, why this topic is important and maybe why it's even timely at this point.
Certainly. Yeah. So it didn't really occur to me that methamphetamines should be on my radar until I started moving around the country doing a lot of locums jobs, specifically in Arizona and California. I was not only seeing a lot of patients who were using methamphetamines, but also I was getting a lot of conflicting information. So we would cancel their cases that they were supposed to have. People would say that they would see methamphetamine in their system for like wild amounts of times. It's just told me something completely different. This doesn't make sense to me. So I really started to look into what do we know about patients who are using methamphetamines. And it's very timely. I hate to say this, but also with the pandemic, there's been a lot of people who haven't been able to get access to recovery services, perhaps, or emotional stressors, and who are turning to various substances, including methamphetamines. So I can't say unequivocally that we've seen a rise in methamphetamines. I know that we've seen a rise in fentanyl usage, but they're all kind of tied hand in hand. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of patients who are using these substances.
So when you say they came in, were they currently using, like right before they came in, or are you just saying if they tested positive or?
Well, some of all of these situations, I have had patients who admitted in their interview that they used methamphetamines that morning.
Oh, lovely.
That one seems like a bit of a softball. Okay, we're going to cancel you.
Yeah.
But then there's other patients who have come in who are needing a surgery, and they say, well, I was at a party and I used methamphetamines and it was 5 days ago, or it was 3 days ago. And then you start to say, okay, well, what surgery are we doing? Do we cancel it? So forth and so on. I think most people would just be safe and blanket statement say, well, we're canceling the surgery. We live in a litigious society. I'm not going to put myself at risk. And I think that that's well within their right to do so. That being said, I think probably that a patient who used 5 days ago is fairly safe, from an anesthesia complication standpoint. Or you have, in my line of work, for example, I work in labor and delivery. So sometimes patients who are using methamphetamines, you don't have the option to cancel.
Right.
They're delivering that baby regardless. So,
oh, wow. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So then you say, well, what can I do for this patient safely? And what are my options?
Let's talk about the nomenclature around all of this substance abuse disorder versus drug abuse. I know you have some thoughts on that.
Yes, I will confess, I did not learn about the importance of this language until I started my doctoral program at Yale. And because it's out there, everybody was like, oh, this patient is abusing drugs, so forth and so on. And even you have government websites that have the word drug abuse in the name. And words matter, right? So it carries with it a certain weight. And if we can make the conscious decision to kind of say substance use disorder, or they're a user, it kind of ties more into the chemical response that's happening in the brain, right? So there is a lot of stuff that happens when somebody uses methamphetamines, and the changes in the brain that occur when somebody uses methamphetamines. And it's not like, oh, well, I'm just trying to like soft roll how much these people may or may not use these substances. It's not about that. It's really kind of tying in more to almost humanizing the process and how difficult it can be to kind of stop using any of these substances as well.
So what are some of the changes in their neurochemistry? I've never used methamphetamine, so I don't have any clue whatsoever.
This was fascinating to learn about, let me tell you.
Because I'm assuming you haven't either. So
I have not. No. Okay. The Navy doesn't really allow it. Go figure. Oh, however,
nor does the anesthesia community.
No. I will preface this little fun fact, though. Methamphetamines were used by soldiers in the past. So they used it kind of like go pills for soldiers who were going off to war, and it amped them up, and it made for great. So back in like the 1912s, I think, Japan and Germany were using methamphetamines for their war fighters, which is intriguing to me.
That is very intriguing.
Well, it's kind of like the Yaya Sisterhood, the movie, and they used to give women methamphetamines. Yeah.
I mean, and it's still used in more legal forms. You know, you have amphetamines, which is just a legal form of methamphetamines, truly, and more a little regulated. And we still have service members who are using that in wartime situations to help keep them awake and alert. I was shocked to learn that as well.
Wow.
So you're saying, the brain chemistry. We have these natural reward systems that release dopamine. And sorry if you can hear my cat. He also wants to make an appearance. We have natural reward systems that release dopamine and serotonin that basically say, oh, I'm happy. Thank you so much. And we can get these from hanging out with friends or having a glass of wine or eating a piece of chocolate cake, so forth and so on. And our natural rewards after doing any of these activities release about 150% above baseline dopamine and serotonin. Well, if you get into substances like cocaine, that will release about 300% above baseline. So you can imagine how much more cocaine makes you feel happy and better, so forth.
Right.
Methamphetamines release up to 1,000 times above baseline.
Wow.
Oh my God.
So it's like a higher high, basically.
Oh, it is completely a higher high. And they have all these radiographic kind of evidence and PET scans and so forth that show various parts of the brain that light up. And there are actually studies where they gave people methamphetamine and put them in the scanner and said, let's see what your brain does.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And it is unbelievable. It just lights the brain up, and it lights it up for a long time. So cocaine, you can kind of guesstimate around about an hour or so, and then you're going to kind of metabolize that and everything's going to start coming down. Methamphetamine is days sometimes where their brain is still lit up. So this is why you'll see patients who have used methamphetamines, they haven't slept for maybe 2 or 3 days. They're just amped up. They're ready to go. And then they crash, and they crash hard.
Well, whenever I do the little quick interviews when I'm in the GI clinic, and whenever you ask, have you ever had a heart attack? And you'll have somebody young who says yes. And the first thing that goes off in my mind is methamphetamines, because that's what they'll do. They'll just do meth so much that their heart just basically can't keep up. And I've had 30-year-olds who've had MIs from just continually doing meth. Wow. They were 30 when they had it. Obviously, if they're in the GI clinic, they're older. But when they say I had a heart attack whenever I was 30, my brain starts dinging then.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, think about people who use cocaine, and then we were concerned about the cardiac fallout from using cocaine. Methamphetamine is the same, except more.
It's interesting to me because, one, being an outsider, but two, to kind of think, I always wonder why people take that first step. And come to cocaine or meth or whatever they're on, how do they get there to that first step? And then now listening to you talk, once you take that first step, it's like, gosh, I want to take that step again. It felt so good. I'm so high, and that's an interesting phenomenon to me because, I might go for a run and get high off a run, but you're saying it's 10 times, 20 times, 30 times more than that. I mean,
yeah, it's pretty intense. And regarding chasing the high, and I didn't put this in my literature, but that once you use something like that encourages that release of neurotransmitters, like you have these little neurotransmitter stores, and that once they release, it's never that same high that you had the first time.
Oh.
So now not only are you trying to get that experience again, you can't find that exact same very first experience again.
So you're chasing.
Yeah. But also in terms of using methamphetamines, it creates such a dearth, such a vacuum of neurotransmitters. Then you just fall and then you're in a very depressed state and your dopamine can't keep up and your serotonin can't keep up. So then you feel like, and I'm just assuming, I'm sorry, the feeling I would think is that you need to use again just to get back to a normal kind of baseline. So if you don't kind of give your body a chance to go through that depressive state after all of your neurotransmitters are released, then you use again, and then you have the same kind of vicious cycle. So it really, when I read that, that's when I started to think, oh my gosh, these people who use methamphetamines, they might get in and have a very hard way finding a way out. So that made it a little bit more human for me, where I went, oh gosh, the struggle to be clean from methamphetamine specifically is so tough.
As a CRNA, you spend years preparing yourself for this career, so we don't want to see you lose out on any of the income you've worked so hard to earn. The best way to protect yourself and give you the confidence that a major life event won't disrupt your financial future is through disability insurance. We've known disability income specialist Robert Smith for many years and have seen the work he's done with nearly 2,000 CRNAs over multiple decades. He can help identify any gaps in your existing coverage and fill those gaps by finding the best value on a policy. Contact Robert and let him know you heard about him on our podcast. Send him an email at rsmithjr@financialguide.com. That's rsmithjr@financialguide.com. Or call him at 504-394-6557. Protect your greatest asset as a CRNA, yourself and your ability to earn a living by adding disability insurance to your financial plan.
So Jenny, just from my viewpoint, and Sharon probably already knows this, and probably a lot of our listeners, but what happens when someone has used meth a considerable amount, or even maybe right before they took an anesthetic? How does that change the way you give an anesthetic? What happens to them, and how does it affect the whole process?
Yeah. So, and this is going to be kind of based on when they used methamphetamines too. So let's take the patient who has used methamphetamines recently and then has presented to the OR, we'll say, for an emergent surgery, so they can't be canceled.
Right.
You're going to have a lot of those circulating neurotransmitters, which are going to cause increased heart rate, increase blood pressure, and you might see that I say amped up, but they're going to be ready to go, and they might be aggressive, so forth and so on. So for these patients, there were a couple of things that I learned in the literature. One was that you really don't want to restrain these patients. And this is a unique kind of a situation. So what happens when people are restrained and struggle when they have that much going on, what you can have is like a sudden cardiovascular collapse via isovolumetric kind of muscle contractions. And the best way that I can describe this to people is if you've ever heard of somebody in the news who was tased and then died.
Yes.
That's kind of what can happen.
Oh, okay.
So they recommend not physically restraining any aggressive methamphetamine substance use disorder patient, but rather chemically sedate them using Versed or, any benzodiazepine. I say Versed because I'm going to assume that most anesthesia providers will have Versed accessible to them. Some of the things even said that you can give like 1 to 2 milligrams of Versed every 8 to 10 minutes to a max of 20 milligrams, which is a lot of Versed. And I say that, but then also I see people who aren't using methamphetamines and can take 10 milligrams of Versed pretty easily. So, keep in mind too, if this is an emergent surgery, probably you're going to intubate them. So are you concerned about their airway? Yes, you are concerned. But if you're going to be managing it anyway, the safety of the patient is going to be first and foremost. And those benzodiazepines will kind of help to counteract all of the high heart rate and hypertensive effects of somebody being so high on methamphetamine.
So surely they're hypertensive since they're all revved up. How do you treat their hypertension? Are there any pearls of wisdom for that?
Yeah. So first and foremost, really, you're going to go back to those benzodiazepines. Generally speaking, should those issues. And if they don't, then you can always go to Haldol. If you're still having problems after you've sedated them appropriately with their high blood pressure or high heart rate, there are a couple of pearls. This is where it kind of gets into the weeds a little bit. So most people might think, labetalol or esmolol. And the pearl here is that the literature is saying that you should not give beta blockers because what can happen is you can have that unopposed alpha stimulation and then it can worsen their hypertension. There are a few hospitals and physicians that I have talked to, and they have also their own supporting literature that says that labetalol is probably acceptable. And this one particular physician in San Francisco has given it to several ER patients, and nothing's been, coming about that the patient is having increased hypertension or any issues from that. The only thing that I could say from looking at the literature review is that the majority of the supporting literature says not to give beta blockers, and that would include labetalol. Now, I think if you're in practice and you gave labetalol, or if you give labetalol, you'll probably be fine and it's probably acceptable. And we will most likely see the literature being updated in the next 10 years that says this is supportive, patients are okay, so forth and so on. If you're still having hypertension and you go, I really, since you said that, don't feel comfortable using beta blockers in any way, shape, or form, we always have the calcium channel blockers or the nitro or the nipride or anything like that. But I think generally what you're going to see is after you've sedated the patient, and certainly if you're putting this patient to sleep, you probably won't have the issues with hypertension. And after you put them to sleep, you might have the opposite problem, hypotension.
Wow. This is, Sharon, again, back to, my noviceness of all this. It's very interesting to listen to this, and it just reiterates what you guys deal with on a daily basis to me. Because you literally are controlling this person's life up and down and, everything. It's amazing that I've known you for that long, Sharon, and that you can do that as well as I know you. It kind of scares me a little bit.
You should be scared. All right, Jenny, you talked about OB, and I'm sure that there are certain implications that someone, a mother who's using methamphetamines, what are some things that we need to know about that?
Yes. This was one of the misconceptions that the literature really kind of clarified for me, because in my practice, people are like, if you have a patient who's using, do not use any kind of neuraxial anesthesia ever. So, exclamation point, yada, yada. And I was like, is that right? Why wouldn't we? So the reasons that people wouldn't maybe necessarily want to use neuraxial anesthesia, and this is not just OB, this could be spinals for ortho procedures, so forth, or so on, is that you'll have just a profound hypotension. So they don't have any more stores of endogenous supply of neurotransmitters. And if you block that, they vasodilate, and then they just kind of can't recover. And you'll see people who are just so hypotensive that you'll be pushing phenylephrine, like sticks and sticks of phenylephrine. You're like, this isn't doing anything. It can be a terrifying situation. So with that kind of note aside, it is not an absolute contraindication if a patient's using methamphetamines to avoid neuroaxial anesthesia. You just kind of go in with that caveat. So if you ask me, have I given an epidural to a patient, a laboring patient who has used methamphetamines? Yes, I have. And you just kind of go into it with the understanding of, in the back of my mind, this patient might get hypotensive, and you're either prepared for that or, willing to kind of take the consequences of it. And of course, this is going to depend on how much the patient uses, when did they last use, so forth and so on. A lot of my methamphetamine, I'm just very honest with them. I mean, they've requested an epidural. I say, I have these concerns about your use. You need to be very upfront with me about when you last used. This is very important for your safety and the safety of your baby. And I had, for example, one patient who said that she had used 4 or 5 days ago. She had an epidural for her other child. She was using with her other child. Nothing was wrong with her epidural. And so I kind of took a step back and looked at how her vital signs were and some of, her labs, like, do her kidneys look okay? Obviously, are her platelets okay? And do I feel safe and comfortable giving this person an epidural? And I said, I'm going to do a test dose, kind of just a soft start. And if we have any issues at all, that's it. We're done. I'm pulling this epidural. And I put in the epidural for her and she did fine. Everything went very well. You can kind of contrast that with another patient that I've had. And this was before I started looking into literature about methamphetamines at all, who came in with, I think, breech and active labor, and we needed to do an emergency C-section, and she was just writhing all over the place. And of course, we restrained her, which is something you're not supposed to do. And it was fine, thank goodness. But we ended up putting her to sleep. And then after putting her to sleep, she had pretty profound hypotension, not only from the anesthesia agents, but also from the recourse from her drug use.
So you just come in with the Neo drip ready to go.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Neo, epi, all of your kind of direct acting vasopressors. Because, you could give ephedrine if that was all you had, but it's not going to do anything.
Now, what vasopressin to get you through, would that work? Or
I had not seen anything in the literature specifically talking about vasopressin, and I have gotten a few questions about that. I couldn't see any reason why you wouldn't give it a shot. Like, if you're desperate, let's be honest. I know the circulating blood volume, that might put a little bit more strain on the heart. And if you're worried about, is this person able to urinate? Are they urinating? That might put a little bit more concern in the back of a person's mind. But if it's what you have, then it's what you have.
so what about ketamine? Not for the blood pressure, obviously, but its use, because it's kind of made a resurgence with the anesthesia community. I love ketamine.
Yeah, I used it a couple of times, actually, just last night.
I love ketamine, even though I had a patient code with it 100 years ago. But you've got to have circulating catechol. And I'm assuming the same thing can happen with these meth addicts because their catechols are depleted. And we had a patient was a bring back transplant nephrectomy, and they had bled out in the PACU, and their hemoglobin was 3 when I got them, and we gave them ketamine for induction, and they flatlined. We got them back, but that drug scared me for a long time, and so I didn't use it. But I've got a whole newfound respect for that drug.
Yeah,
but we shouldn't use them with these meth addicts.
I generally advise people to abstain
for that very reason. You have no catechols.
Exactly.
So it would just push them on over the edge, like what I saw.
Yeah. And again, you can kind of take that with a grain of salt. Like, when did they use last? So forth and so on. But yeah, if they are coming in and have used recently, I would avoid it.
Today's show is brought to you by the folks at CRNA Financial Planning, an independent consulting firm that offers financial planning services exclusively to CRNAs and their families. From planning for a child's future college expenses to building a predictable income stream in retirement, the firm is committed to offering you comprehensive financial services, customized to fit your unique needs and objectives. If you have questions about your financial future, get them answered. Call the team at 855-304-3748. That's 855-304-3748. Or go online to crnafinancialplanning.com.
So, any other things that you found out in your literature search and the things that you've learned? And then tell us how you disseminated your information and how our listeners can get to all this work that you did.
Yeah. I will be honest. One thing I was hoping to find in the literature was this pie in the sky test that said, oh, you're this amount of intoxicated from methamphetamine like you have with alcohol. That didn't exist that I found, which was disappointing because that, if we had that, could give more of a baseline for saying, hey, this patient came in high, low, medium risk, complications based on how intoxicated they are. The only thing that we really test for is urine or blood, and it says amphetamine positive or negative. And that's really tricky because people metabolize things at all kinds of different rates. And that was another misconception I got. People like, oh, they're still positive 3 days later. That should be out of their system. They're using still, and they lied to us. Well, we can't say that unequivocally because sometimes a patient can test positive for up to 10 days, which is extraordinary. So I wish that that had come about in research and it didn't. So until then, we're still kind of in this land of, well, I mean, to be safe, if they're positive, if you can cancel their surgery, you should probably cancel their surgery. And how I disseminated the information was, of course, my doctorate at Yale University. And in that process, I was able to publish a paper with the Anesthesia Patient Safety Foundation regarding these kind of suggestions, literature review, and it really breaks down the hypertensive aspects of it, what to do if your patient is hypotensive, using the benzodiazepines first, not restraining the patient. So that was a brief, I don't want to call it brief, but kind of brief little article that you could kind of carry around with you. And as an aside, I also made an algorithm that somebody could just look at really quickly and say, has my patient used methamphetamines? Yes, no, cancel, not cancel. And then if you have to proceed with the surgery for somebody who's used more recently, what actions that they can take. That one I'm still working on getting out to the people, so to speak. But I'm also working on having a chapter published in a textbook regarding patients who use methamphetamines. I think that was the most gratifying for me too, because if you go to any anesthesia textbook, their section on methamphetamines is like 2 sentences, and cocaine gets all these pages and pages. And I don't want to be like, come on, guys.
Yeah, well, if you send us the algorithm, we'll post that in the show notes.
Yeah.
And if you'll send us the link to your article, we'll post that in the show notes so that people can go and take a look at that. That algorithm will prove to be very helpful, I think.
I hope so. We had a lot of other experts in the field help figure that out as well. So we do have some other, it's not just me making this up. We have other experts that have helped me along this process, and I can't thank them enough.
Well, Jenny, as we kind of conclude here, is there anything else you want to get across to our listeners? I mean, you obviously know this stuff. You've done a great job here today, giving us a taste of what you've put together. Anything else you'd like to conclude on?
Yeah, I think, number one, don't panic. If you see somebody who's used methamphetamines and you can't cancel their surgery, people are very resilient. So even if we're like, oh my gosh, I was doing all this stuff in the past that I shouldn't have been doing, don't panic. It'll be okay. Remember, Versed is your friend always and forever. And then if just as a personal aside, reading all of this literature and kind of going through the neurochemical process, just kind of keep an open mind. I know a lot of times as anesthesia providers, as people, we can carry around these biases which might impact our care of patients. So if one thing you could say, oh man, I didn't know that it could be this difficult for somebody who has used methamphetamines to stop using methamphetamines, and then just kind of approach your patients with as much of a your cat, that's Pepper.
Jenny, it's kind of funny. I'm listening to you talk and you're like, don't panic. And your voice is so calm and mellow. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if she told me that, I wouldn't panic. I mean, it's just, you have this easygoing sort of demeanor. I like that. So.
This comes from years of doing OB anesthesia. My patients are awake and they are panicking, and you can't give them hardly anything until that baby comes out. And you just go, it's okay. Don't panic. A lot of people have said I sound like a yoga instructor.
You do. And you even smiled the whole time you said it. And you have this demeanor about you. I mean, I don't know about you, Sharon, but I could kind of almost sit there and just listen to her talk for a little while, and my blood pressure's going down and down and down.
Exactly. She's got another job if anesthesia doesn't work out.
Right.
She can make these tapes for people to listen to.
People are going to be like, this is about methamphetamines, and she doesn't sound like a methamphetamine. Really, I do not use. Although it is awkward for having my name tied to methamphetamine. You can Google Krogh, methamphetamine.
Oh, wow. And you pop right
Bam.
up.
And there you are.
Yeah.
Well, that just means that you're an expert on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Jenny, we want to thank you today for being on the show, and obviously for all that you're doing here and giving back and so forth to the community. And I know that Sharon and you met through Yale, and that had to be a special time in both of your lives. And I can just see between the two of you the camaraderie today, and that's pretty special in itself as well. So
it was a great time. I wish it would have ended a little bit differently with the COVID, but. Yeah,
but you guys made it. You did it.
We made it.
And you're on the other side.
Yes.
I think we need to do the lightning round with Jenny.
Well, let's do the lightning round then, Sharon. I know that's your favorite.
So, Jenny, name one thing on your bucket list.
I want to travel more. Specifically, I want to go to Japan and I want to go to Greece.
Our Greek cruise after Croatia was canceled. I'm so disappointed due to COVID. So next time we're just going to go without going to the IFNA meeting, and I'll call you.
Yes.
All right, Jenny, if you could have dinner with anyone alive or dead, who would it be?
Oh, Ernest Hemingway.
Oh,
we've never heard that
We've
name.
not
That's a
heard that
good
one.
one.
Why? Tell me why.
I love his writing, and I find him to be a fascinating person. Maybe not always a good person,
Very true.
but a fascinating person.
Huh. Interesting.
So if you could have another profession, Jenny, what would that be?
I would be a chef, no question. I have a Peloton, and I am part of the Peloton CRNA group. And my tagline is Bike for Bakes. And basically, if I'm not working, I'm just cooking and baking.
Making bread. You're not in your bread phase anymore so much. You used to post your bread all the time on your Instagram and stuff.
Yeah, I got into the sweetbreads though. Like for Mardi Gras, I made this most delicious king cake. Oh, it was divinity.
And your husband looks like a twig. Does he not eat what you make?
He does. It's so rude. I have tried to get him to gain weight almost 10 years now, and he won't do it.
His metabolism must be off the charts. That's what you're telling us.
It is.
All right. So this is the one that I always end with. If you won the lottery, Jenny, what would you do?
Oh, I would travel to Japan and Greece.
Comes full circle, doesn't it?
Yeah. I don't know. I would say quit my job, but I don't think that I would. I really like my job. I wish sometimes it wasn't so stressful or makes me so sleep deprived, but I do. I love it. So I would probably work less though, because I'd be traveling so much.
Yeah. Would you stay in OB?
I would. But it is nice to take vacations from OB from time to time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a tough one. I was never an OB girl.
I find that anesthesia providers, you either love OB or hate OB, and there's not a lot of gray area. So yeah.
Well, Jenny, thank you so much for being on. Sharon, I think it's a wrap.
I think so.
Well, we want to thank our listeners for listening to Beyond the Mask with Jeremy Stanley and
Sharon Pierce.
If you like our show and want to help us grow, Sharon, how can they help us grow?
Well, the best way to help us grow is to leave us a review. But above and beyond that, tell all your friends, share it on social media, help us grow. We're in the top 50 medical podcasts in the country, and Jeremy wants us to be number
1, of course. And if they leave a review, Sharon, just tell them to make sure it's
positive.
There's enough negativity in the world, right?
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And as my grandma used to say, you ain't got nothing good to say.
Don't say anything at all.
There you go. Till next time.
It's a wrap.
Have you thought about what would happen if you weren't able to work for 2 or 3 years? You know, on average, 25% of people will file a disability claim, and most of us aren't prepared for that loss of income. Every CRNA needs to protect their biggest asset, yourself, and your ability to earn with a disability insurance policy. We recommend contacting Robert Smith, a master disability insurance specialist with more than 30 years of experience and 1,800 CRNA clients, to find the coverage that fits you best. The best way to do that is to send him an email at rsmithjr@financialguide.com. That's rsmithjr@financialguide.com, or call him at 504-394-6557. Beyond the Mask is made possible by the team at CRNA Financial Planning. With almost 2 decades of experience, the firm guides CRNAs through the complexities of investing and financial planning. Schedule a free consultation today by calling 855-304-3748 or go online to crnafinancialplanning.com.
Hi, this is Jackie Rolls, President of the International Federation of Nurse Anesthetists and President and founder of Our Hearts, Your Hands, a global anesthesia support community that takes donations to allow nurse anesthetists in low and middle income countries to go to educational programs, buy equipment, or textbooks. Your donations are tax deductible, and we would appreciate your support.
OSA EMR is a free anesthesia EMR developed by CRNAs that you can download and use on an iPad. Our nonprofit mission is to make sure that solo and small practice CRNAs can digitally record their anesthetics. To learn more, visit osaemr.com to download and consider donating to our cause. Remember, for CRNAs, data is destiny.
Be sure to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you like to listen to shows. Also be sure to check out BeyondTheMaskPodcast.com. Each episode is posted there with a corresponding blog post, and we timestamp important parts of the episode to help you quickly get to the content you're looking for. Also check out the special series section on the site. You can follow along and catch up on the CRNA History Series, episodes specifically about political conversations in the industry, or try the CRNA Personal Finance Series. It's all on BeyondTheMaskPodcast.com. And if you have a question for the show or want to be a guest, or even suggest a particular topic, fill out the contact form on the site or send an email directly to us at info@beyondthemaskpodcast.com. And lastly, let's take the conversation social. Check out our Beyond the Mask podcast Facebook page and Facebook group.